we're here to talk a little bit about what we as an observability team do at Google Cloud to try and improve the troubleshooting experience. So we'll jump past the introduction slide there, and sort of working through this and how we like to approach this. We thought a little bit about what we wanted to share, what was new, give some practical advice through Next experience, and then also talk about what's coming. So I'd like to start this from sort of a moment of when I've been at Google for a little over just about 3 years now. Maya's been here a little longer than that, and one of the things that's great about being at Google is there's just a massive amount of data available to us that we try and make available to you. So if you're using cloud monitoring or cloud logging or cloud trace, a lot of this stuff can be built in and automatic. When you connect to a service, logs, telemetry immediately starts flowing, and there's a lot of data out there, but it can be tough to make that useful. I mean, when I was at Red Hat, I was a Linux admin. That's where I sort of started in my career in technology. It was actually kind of challenging to get a view of the whole stack. It was a very thin slice of what people were looking at in their day-to-day. And Maya, was on the edge of computing for a long time. I think that's probably a similar situation for you.
Yeah, so before coming to Google, I was working at Akamai. So Akamai is doing content delivery network. You're sitting on the edge, and you can see if there is a networking problem. But when the problem is coming from a different place, it will always a struggle to understand what was causing it.
Yeah. For us, it's been really nice to sort of get the whole picture of what's going on. And so starting with a lot of data is an interesting problem, but then sort of the next thing behind that is how do we make it useful? And there's a great quote from Tim Ferriss on this, this sort of model or thinking about stuff, which would be what would it look like if this were easy? And so when he talks about that, what would it look like if it were easy is sort of putting aside preconceived notions. You maybe have expectations, maybe you've come from another cloud provider, maybe you're just coming from on-premise, or maybe you've been with Google the whole time, but the way you experience and sort of decide what you should do with that data might be different. And we try to think about either interesting or helpful ways to extend beyond some basics. And so maybe to give an example of that, when you look at, so we recently rolled out events inside of Google Cloud. Now, maybe you are in sort of the melt stack where it's, metrics, events, logs, and trace, or maybe you're just sort of on the three pillars of observability, right? There's a lot of debate, but most people agree events are helpful in terms of troubleshooting. And so we introduced a feature where you can look at any chart that we have and overlay sort of relevant events based off of that. That includes, like GKE, GCE. We're going to be rolling out some new features from other locations in the future. But when we look at this, we see that it's sort of helpful to overlay this to people. It's just not always sort of the best next step of what we can do to make it easier. So we introduced events, but when we actually started going through that, we started to look at what would be a good next step. And the next step there for us was this idea of troubleshooting playbooks. Now, the troubleshooting playbooks are a tool that we provide to make it in context and provide a little more detail so that when you're troubleshooting something for the first time, you actually get helpful feedback. And that's based off of that event scenario that I just talked about. When I say in context, Maya, do you want to tell us a little bit about what we say when we think about in context?
Yeah, so I think part of the challenge we've heard is that there are a lot of things in Google Cloud, right? And when you come to the console, it's really, really hard to know where to find the most relevant thing. And so our thinking was rather than you going on a search, figuring out where the observability tools are, those should be available to you in whatever product you're working on. And so in this example, the playbook would actually be in a GKE page. So Kyle, can you tell us a little bit how that is working today?
Yeah. So let's take a look actually, sort of a run through this GIF. So this is actually in the Kubernetes interface where we identified a particular scenario. This is a pods are unschedulable. And so this is just us, and I sort of, I messed up the system on the back end. You can see what we did was made a couple of nodes unschedulable, but that triggers this playbook environment for people to see. And what actually happens here is without you having to do anything, without you having to go anywhere else, you can get that alert, you see the playbook, make it available to you, and you can immediately start working through this. Now this playbook it's not magic, right? These are the events I just talked about. They are a dashboard framework that's available to customers to build their own ones. We just wanted to take this and sort of extend it and try and make it a little bit easier for people to get started. We did this with a couple of interesting scenarios, mostly focused on Kubernetes to start with, just because we saw from our support teams that there was a large amount of support cases in these specific scenarios. So things like unscheduled pods, out of memory CPU utilization issues, or a couple of other sort of unique things. But we wanted to make it easier in that specific area and sort of get that into the world and help customers create these. So we have both on the event side and on the playbook side, an initial round of these, released for GKE and specific events for a handful of GCP services, and we'll be looking at rolling that out to additional services and external factors in the future. So the other piece of this, when we try to think about what does it look like when it's easy, is I guess a quick show of hands. Does anyone here use Grafana? A lot of people. Okay, all right. So we hear that pretty regularly, and like if you want to continue to use Grafana, you absolutely can. But if you're looking to sort of consolidate or work on GCP, we introduced a tool to make it easy to import Grafana dashboards into Google Cloud. And the reason for that is, with the launch of our managed service for Prometheus a couple of years ago, we've seen a number of people sort of standardize on, I think, one or two sort of telemetry instrumentation platforms, I'll say that, which is Prometheus and OpenTelemetry. And Grafana has a wide availability. The community has a wide availability of dashboards and data focused on Prometheus metrics. And so we wanted to make it easy for people to migrate or kickstart that really quickly without having to do a lot of the work themselves. What we're going to be introducing in the near future here, in addition to making it easy to import and making it easy to discover stuff that's already there, we're going to have automatic recommendations on certain types of dashboards. So whether you're troubleshooting your particular team or sort of working on a mental model that makes more sense to your organization, we want to bubble that up and make it easy for folks to find what's going on with their environment based off of what we see in the telemetry that we see sort of coming in and out of systems. So I want to briefly talk about where we are with some of the work in Gemini and sort of how we focus on making that easier. This is one example, and what you're looking at here is our synthetic monitoring tool. And in synthetic monitoring, we use Node.js and Mocha to build our synthetic monitors. Not everyone knows that language. Some people prefer a CLI tool to build this. But one of the things we heard from customers pretty quickly was like, this has value. How do we make it easier to sort of bootstrap that? And so with Gemini, we're able to do that. Now, if you want to see this or some of these other features, we actually have this down in the Innovators Hive downstairs. Like, please come down, check it out, see more about it from us. I'll be down there later today at the booth. But this is actually prompting Gemini to build a synthetic monitor for a specific endpoint. And you can do this pretty consistently, and I would say with pretty good results, where you can immediately have a Node.js script that'll run that synthetic monitor for you without you having to know how to write Node.js code at a pretty high level. So we're really excited about features like this that make it, again, having Gemini actually built in and apply to a specific use case. Similarly, when we look at, this is a explain this log function. And again, we have this downstairs. I'm just going to grab my water here. We have this downstairs, but if you are looking at a log in the Log Explorer, you can see this button on the left-hand side of this, and maybe it's not as clear as I hoped it would be on the screen, but if you click on that button, it'll give you a little more insight into what this log means and what happened. You can also sort of expand beyond that and say, how can I avoid issues like this in the future? And get generally good advice from our knowledge base, from our documentation, on some of these specific issues. And again, this is demoable and available downstairs if you want to take a look at it. Just please stop by. So one of the things I'll say is we recognize that our tools, we try and build useful tools, but where the rubber hits the road a lot of the time is with customers and how they choose to implement it. Now, maybe you're using SRE, maybe you have a different sort of structure for your team, but I'd love to hand the mic over to Nick and have him tell us a little bit about SRE at Optum and how they use the tools and sort of that workflow. So.
Cool. Thank you, Kyle. Yeah. The most important feature of any application is its reliability. If you've heard about SLOs, or maybe you read about them in the Google SRE books, this talk will give you a real-world example of how we implemented them using Google Cloud and how they were part of our overall observability strategy that reduced time to recover and outages for one of our key user journeys. Hi, my name is Nek, and I'm an SRE at Optum. Optum is a healthcare and well-being company with business in healthcare, pharmacy, and technology. At Optum, we built a cloud-native healthcare imaging platform called Stratus Imaging. The platform runs within Google Cloud, which allows doctors and patients to access the platform from wherever they may be. Some of our key workflows are patient image archiving, image viewing, sharing, and analytics. To ensure the stability and reliability of Stratus Imaging, we use SLOs as one of the key indicators of the platform's health and our customer happiness. So let's go through a real example of SLOs that we've actually created and talk about how we implement them, measure them, and react all within Google Cloud. Step one in SLO creation is choosing a critical user journey that you want to monitor. In general, your customers are using your application to achieve one or more goals. One of these goals is called a user journey. A user journey for an SLO must be critical, meaning that your users will consider this task as a very important interaction with your application. For us, viewing patient images is one of our key critical user journeys, and at a high level, that journey is a user logging in with their browser, searching for an image data set by a patient name or another identifier, and then clicking on that data set and viewing the images. And here's an overview of the user journey. You can see at the top we have a high-level traffic flow, and on the bottom we have the result after the images have loaded for the radiologist. So now we need a way to measure the user journey to make sure our customers are happy. For that, we use what are called service level indicators, or SLIs. So step two in creating an SLO is defining how and what you will measure. SLIs are metrics that measure one aspect of a service's reliability. Ideally, they would have a linear relationship with your user's experience and must provide a clear definition of good and bad events. They are shown as the ratio of two numbers, the number of good events divided by the number of valid events. For RCUJ, this would be the number of patient image data sets viewed divided by the total number attempted. When choosing an SLI, we should measure high-level things that users actually care about, like load times, responsiveness, and availability. You wouldn't generally measure something like a database memory usage. That's too low level. So we're going to define one availability and one latency SLI. For availability, it will be images should be opened and displayed successfully. And for latency, it's the first image of a data set should be displayed quickly. So how do we actually define successfully and quickly, and where will we get the measurements from? For success, we are going to measure the proportion of image data sets that were opened. And for latency, because an image data set can have hundreds or more images in it, we're going to measure the time it takes for the first image to be displayed. And both of these will be measured by custom log entries emitted by our front end. Now we have our SLIs. We need to instrument some part of the CUJ to collect and emit the measurements. Generally, you would want to measure as close to the customer as you can. In our case, the measurements are actually coming from the client. They're sent to our front end and then logged into cloud logging. And I've actually included our log entries here that we use for our SLOs. So we take these logs and we then convert them into log-based metrics. And here's our actual Terraform code that we use to create these. On the left is availability, and on the right is latency. For the availability metric, we need a label that we can use to differentiate between a good event and a bad event. And I've highlighted that there in orange. So now that we've defined and created our SLIs, we can now actually create the SLO. But what is an SLO? An SLO is nothing more than a reliability target for an SLI. SLO should have a performance and availability target that, if barely met, would keep the typical customer happy. And here you can see the SLOs. Every SLO will require a target percentage and a compliance window. As an example, I've chosen 95% over a 28-day rolling window. This means that 95% of all image viewing requests must be good and fast. But it also means that 5% are allowed to fail, and this is called the error budget. Every SLO will have its own error budget, and it'll be calculated as 1 minus the SLO. Now that we have the SLO definitions, we can actually create them in Google Cloud. And again, here's some Terraform code. So this code will create 2 SLOs using the log-based metrics from earlier. In addition, we created a custom SLO service at the top there that we will attach the SLOs to. And here are the SLOs as they appear in Google Cloud after we apply that Terraform. You can see the custom service at the top and then the 2 SLOs below it. We use this dashboard to see the current and historical performance of all of our SLOs and their error budgets. And we can also see if any alerts have fired for them. So now that we've defined our CUJ, SLIs, and SLOs, the final step is to create alerting. Typically, you won't be looking at that SLO dashboard all the time, so we need alerts to notify us if the error budget is in trouble. Our overall goal for alerting is to only be alerted when the current burn rate of the error budget will cause it to be exhausted before the end of that 28-day window. To do this, we use error budget burn rate alerts. So this we copied directly from Google's SRE workbook, and it has been working really well for us. It helped us reduce alert noise by having both a long and short retest window. And with those, we can confirm that we're still actively burning the error budget before alerting. So here's our alerting strategy. We now need to create the alerts in Google Cloud. And again, here's some Terraform code for one of those burn rate alerts. This one happens to be 2% of the error budget burned in the last 1 hour. There are 2 conditions on the alert, one for the short window and one for the long window. And a key here is the combiner at the top. That will ensure that both of the conditions are true before sending the alert. Also, you see a linked runbook here. Please do not create an alert that will wake up a human without it including a runbook. You can imagine you're a new on-call engineer for the first time and you get alerted at 3 o'clock in the morning and there's no runbook and you have no idea what to do. After applying the code, here are what the alerts will look like in Google Cloud. So what happens when we get alerted? Because the alerts and our SLOs have allowed us to detect the issue early, our on-call engineer has time to wake up, get to his computer, and start troubleshooting with the runbook. After the issue is resolved, we hold a post-mortem where we create action items to make sure that same issue does not happen again. Also, if you didn't detect the issue or didn't detect it quickly enough, you should also create action items to improve your SLOs or other monitoring. You never want your customer to detect an issue before you do. This overall strategy has been a big part of reducing time to recover and the number of outages for this CUJ. Thank you, and I'll hand it over to Maya now.
Thank you so much, Nick. This was such a great example for how to use our tools, and I'm so happy to see that it's helped you kind of reduce overall outages at Optum. So now I'm going to speak about what's next. We have a great tool. You can already use it and see great results, as we saw from Nick's presentation, but we know that we can do more. And so I'll walk you through some of the investments that we have for the coming years. Our goal is to really leverage Google's strength when we're building our tools. Now, before we're jumping in, one thing that I wanted to call out is that we actually changed our name. I don't know how much of you paid attention in the past, but we used to be Google Cloud Operations. We actually feel that that wasn't the most informative name to what we're doing. What we're doing is helping you monitor your system, look at your logs. And today, the term observability is becoming much stronger in the industry, so we adjusted, and from now on, we're called Google Cloud Observability. One more small change that is worthwhile noting, today when you'll go into the console, go into Cloud Observability, what you'll see is we're also creating a menu that gives you all the tools around observability, making it much easier for you to navigate through the different tools that we offer. So let's speak about our focus areas for the coming year. The first one that we have is actually around getting signals in, right? Without signals, it doesn't matter which tools I'll give you, you can't really do much. And what we've seen in the industry is that the industry is focusing on open source with OpenTelemetry. And we are aligning with that and focusing on OpenTelemetry. I'll give you a bit more data about that in a minute. The second area that we have is around observability analytics. So now that you have all your signals with Google, how can we give you even more power to do amazing things with that data? And what we know is just observability data sometimes is not enough. You probably need more information to really get the right business insights. So observability analytics would be the tool that would allow you to do that with the support of BigQuery. The third investment area that we have is around APM, focusing on applications, and AI ops. So as we saw with Next example, at the end of the day, what you care about is your applications and your end users, which means that you really need to look at how your application is doing. And we need to ensure that it's easier for you to see from our tools how your application is doing and not just the infrastructure. And then, of course, with AI kind of taking over the world, there is a question of like, what can we do with those tools coming from Google to make your life easier? So let's dive in. Let's start with OpenTelemetry. So OpenTelemetry is the open source standard for collecting signals. And what is really amazing with that tool is that it is provider agnostic. So once you're adopting OpenTelemetry, you can actually decide to switch between vendors and you have no lock-in. That's exactly the point. Your data is portable. So you make that decision once and you're kind of free for the rest of your observability journey. And that is amazing. And that also gives you a way to bring data into us or anywhere else from any infrastructure that you have, whether it's on GCP or off GCP. Now, there is going to be a full session giving you more details. Kyle, when is that happening?
Yeah, it's tomorrow afternoon at 1:30. It's dev session 222. And so OpenTelemetry pipelines, simplifying it.
And we'll show you the details of that session in a bit, but that will give you a real deep dive on how to approach OpenTelemetry and how to do that transition if you want to learn more. The second area that we have is the observability analytics. So again, you have all your observability data with us. That's amazing. How can we really empower you to get business insights out of it? Because observability data just for itself is not enough. So what we're doing is we're taking metrics, logs, traces, we're putting all of that in BigQuery. And that opens up a world of opportunities from an analytics perspective. There was a really interesting session that happened yesterday with MLB showing how you can then also join your billing data and really get insights on how you can optimize costs. That's one example of what you can do with observability analytics, but there are many more opportunities that are coming out from this solution. Right now, you can already leverage log analytics when you're using logging and start seeing what type of insights and interesting queries you can get out of that data. Moving to the third area. So what we really want to do is make it super easy in GCP to focus on your applications. So we want APM to be out of the box for you. We're partnering with a team in GCP that is called AppHub to really focus on identify applications out of the box for you and make it simple to start focusing on your application in GCP. This means that we'll start bringing all the industry standard APM tools to the market. The first one is the App Health View. Next, we're going to also add an application topology view, helping you understand the connections between your different services, your different deployments, which will eventually allow us also to get you a service health view. Because at the end of the day, what you want to know is how is my services doing? And where is the issue? How quickly can I understand which is the problematic service? And so APM will allow us to give you this information out of the box. Now, all of that is good, but now there is the question of like, what do we do with the AI technology that is coming upon us, right? Now, Kyle already started speaking about some of those capabilities that are out there today, but there is much more. And AI is still early in its evolvement. So the way we are thinking about it is kind of what is that journey and how it will apply to the tools that we're providing you. The framework we're looking at is looking at 4 different levels that eventually will get us to a world that is much more automated and simpler, but it will take time. The first kind of level is level 1, which we call the reference guide, right? That's where you can go to Gemini today and ask about a problem. You can get the relevant documentation. You can also get a log and get Gemini to explain that log. The second one is the information retrieval, which is more specific to your deployment. So what we'll see is like how can Gemini can actually go and get information that is relevant to me about my deployment right now. The third is where we can start using it as an advisor. So we know a little bit about your data. We know everything about GCP. How we can start giving you recommendations on what you need to do. How can we give you a direction of where the problem might be? Fourth area is autopilot. That's where you can actually trust the AI to tell you where is the problem and actually run some of the actions on your behalf, becoming super proactive and helping you reduce incidents. So let's see how we're moving in that direction. So we spoke about the first kind of L1 level, which allows you to look at a log and get explanation about the log. What we're doing right now is not only that we take the log, explain it to you in English. Logs sometimes can be a bit confusing when you just read them. We can then also refer from that log what is the right guide that you should leverage for this specific issue that is identified by the log. So that is available right now, and as Kyle mentioned, you can go down to the booth and play with that. The next thing that we have is the ability to ask questions of Gemini about our data, or your data, right? So for example, we have all the information about your deployments in GCP. And let's say that you want to make sure if your VMs are well behaving, or if there is any specific issue with a VM that the CPU utilization is really high. You can now ask those questions in Gemini, and we will get the relevant data to you and chart it for you so you can quickly identify if there is any specific issue. In this situation, you still need to be suspicious of a specific area and then ask the question. The next thing is kind of level 3, where we're starting to assist you. So in this specific example, which is right now starting preview, we are looking at an issue and identifying that there is some problem in the connectivity. At that point, we can actually recommend and run a connectivity test in your behalf to give you even more insights how bad, how severe is the problem. Is there really an issue there?
and I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is we've talked about this before, but one of my favorite things about this is, when I started off as a Linux admin, I had a mentor, right? And having sort of that L2 person behind me who could jump in and give proactive advice and sort of say like, this is what you're looking for, or this is maybe an approach to start solving this. To me, I think this is maybe one of the most exciting things. Obviously, the L4 stuff is really interesting from a productivity standpoint, but from growing and building good teams and being able to access this information and help people onboard faster, I don't think could be understated how important that is going to be to a lot of organizations. So this is something, and I keep saying this to Maya, like I'm really excited about this, so I'm looking forward to hearing feedback from folks on it too.
Thanks, Kyle. Yeah, I agree. Like having someone that is can be by your side and guide you through all those problems, that's the goal. That's where we want to go. But we want to go even further. And that would be level 4, which is basically going to give you a full assistant that is also looking at all your observability data, understanding what anomalies are happening, what are the different correlations that are happening, and really giving you proactive insights, and then helping you understand what is needed to resolve that. And if it's on GCP, even giving you kind of the opportunity to do it through the assistant in GCP. Now, this is going to be a journey, as I mentioned, right? I think we all need to be in a place that we trust the AI to take actions on our behalf. So the way we're going to approach it is slowly. First, just by giving you recommendations, by recommending actions, by getting you to interact with the chat interface and give us feedback back. But eventually, our goal is really to have a proactive tool that can help you understand where issues might occur early on. And this is where things like the events that Kyle spoke about in the beginning will really play an important role. Because the more we can get that information and understand that, oh, you just had a deployment, and now we're seeing metrics starting to move in a certain direction, the more we can be helpful and kind of guide you through those challenges. So with that in mind, what we really need is feedback from you, because this is a new area for all of us, and we want to make sure that the tools that we are building are suitable for your needs. So if you're open to speaking with us, please feel free to scan this code, and then we will set time with you and seek some more feedback to learn more about your challenges and the way you would like us to help you solve those. And lastly, we had several sessions at Next about observability. And so you can see kind of the list of sessions that we've had. There are a few more that are coming later today and tomorrow. So I encourage you to check them out. And also for some of the sessions that happened yesterday, those sessions, most of them were recorded. So if you want, you can check them out. Probably next week, all the recording would be online, and you can check them out and learn more about the different examples also from some of the customers that presented with us.